have you like thought about your automations? They'll have their marketing campaigns that go out on a weekly basis, but then they won't consider the timing of like their automations that they have running. Could be like post-purchase, re-engagement, whatever it is. They've not thought about the logic of like, or governance in terms of, okay, these customers will receive an email in a week, but then what might they also receive in that week from an automation perspective? I think when people talk about email marketing, I don't think they realize like how complex it can be. There's so many moving parts.
Welcome to Email After Hours by Senderscore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours. Welcome to another episode of Email After Hours, everybody. Today, we have got 3 email marketing consultants on the pod, and we're talking about the process of working with a client with an email problem. So buckle up. We'll get into navigating the unexpected, asking the right questions, and making sure our clients are armed with actionable next steps.
That's right. Our guest today is Phil Ireland, an email marketing consultant with over 16 years of experience in CRM and email marketing. And during that time, Phil's worked with many major brands like Shell, KFC, American Express, helping them improve their email strategies, fix their data, and most importantly, boost their customer engagement. Phil, we're super excited to have you here with us today.
So thank you so much, guys. No, as we were saying, obviously before we went on there, I was just saying how much I've enjoyed watching previous episodes, and honestly, it's one of those like little things I can tick off this year is to obviously feature on here. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. And before we get into the meat and potatoes today, we're going to start with just a quick fire question. And maybe this is one very specific to me, but hopefully you've got a good answer for us. Sometimes the best ideas come when we're not even trying. For me, it happens when I'm walking my dog. For some people, they're just stuck in traffic or zoning out in the shower. So tell us, what is the most unlikely location that you've had an aha moment in after struggling with an email challenge?
Most of the time when I'm walking, well, I say dog, I've got 2 dogs. Most of the time when I'm walking them, I'll have like, I'll be listening to something like, on Spotify or YouTube, and someone might say something just during the conversation, and I'll go, I don't know what happened, but I just get an idea, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I can use that for this or that, or it might spur a moment to do like a post on LinkedIn or something like that. So what I try and do now is basically do like voice recordings while I'm walking. So I'll either like voice record via WhatsApp to like a friend, so at least I've got that recording, or I'll set up a voice recording and then basically I'll play it back when I get home. Or the other one is the shower.
You've taken a step back and now you've achieved that clarity.
I've got 3 kids, I've got 2 dogs, I've got 3 cats. Like, it's a busy household.
So you have a menagerie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a mini zoo. So you kind of throw all that in, and then obviously you're trying to then do work and stuff like that. Like, I call it control chaos because it is very much like that. So in those kind of downtime moments where, you're walking the dog or just, in the shower, whatever, like I'll map things out in my head.
I'm 100% with you guys on dog walking. That's a good one for me as well. And I find the only downside as I get older is I've got to stick it into a voice note as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I get home and I've forgotten it already. And I find that because my other great source of email ideas is when I'm riding my motorbike, and then you're stuffed because when you've got a helmet on and you're riding at 80 miles an hour, you can't write down a note or like, dictate a little voice note to yourself. You just got to like really pray you're going to remember it until you get to wherever I'm going. Anyway, so today we're talking about how different consultants approach their work. And I think this is going to be interesting because for Danielle and myself, we are first and foremost consultants too. So a topic that's very close to our hearts. When you step into a new project, I find that every consultant kind of has their own playbook. There's a couple of areas that, you're always going to look at, but what's your starting point when you're working with a brand new email program and you're taking that first shot at troubleshooting whatever's wrong with them?
So the way I look at things now is I try and understand the business first in the terms of like, what's their objectives? What are they trying to achieve? You guys will probably have the same thing where a business will have various different issues with their email, for example, or they'll have specific KPIs that they need to hit. So I always try and understand from the business perspective, like what is the priority now, short term, and then what are those priorities in medium and long term, because you can't fix everything at once. And once you get into kind of the nitty gritty of a business and what they're doing, you kind of start to fundamentally see that there's issues everywhere. So you can't fix everything at once, and there's various red tape you might find or whatever. So yeah, I think the biggest thing now I try and do is try and take a step back and understand, like, from a business, what are they trying to achieve, and how can email as a channel help achieve those things, because email's not going to fix everything, but it can definitely help with what the overall objectives are. And I think that's something that I've learned over the years now to try and like kind of tackle first before then going into like the nitty gritty of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see Danielle nodding. I think we've experienced that too. It's been our journey too. I think it's also fair to say that, as you go into that initial discovery, you might have, some kind of pre-formed idea of what you're expecting to find. And then you start scratching and you start to realize it's completely different to what you might have been expecting. And has that been the case with you? You may have an example of your initial checks have revealed something that was completely out of line with what you thought you were going to see.
I find with a lot of the bigger companies is that they have so many issues with data. So they might be like, right, we've got this problem with a journey. We're not, we're trying to reduce churn, or we're trying to engage more people, or we're trying to boost inactivity, or whatever it is. And when you start to look into the, into the like the detail, you find that like they're missing so many issues with data in terms of like, personalization. They don't have all the information that they want to kind of execute on campaigns. And one big thing I find, especially with bigger companies, is that they kind of treat their databases as like one big database, and then they try and segment. And then when you look into it, you realize that they don't then consider like who's marketable and who isn't. So you end up seeing like volumes massively change. Am I okay to call out certain companies, or are we not allowed to do that? I don't work with them anymore, so it's fine. When I worked with Kellogg's and I worked with Shell in particular, Shell's massive. I mean, Shell's a big company, and I was working, helping with their B2B strategies, and their data it could give you nightmares in terms of when you're trying to understand. They wanted to do so many different things, and Shell's such a big company, but like they wanted to do all these different journeys. And then when you've actually factored in certain things, you realize that we couldn't choose particular journeys until we'd done some of the journeys first. It was kind of like, well, it's kind of like the chicken and egg. Like, we can't do this until we've done this. And yeah, it was just a minefield. Like, from a consultant perspective, it's great because you can straight away see that there's plenty of work to do.
No, I can't remember who it was, but you're reminding me. We've had another guest where they mentioned that they started to dream about email marketing, and whoever it was, their partner would like let them know about what their dream ideas about fixing a program were. And between the voice notes that you guys have mentioned and the dream of the like nightmare scenario, yeah, I can completely empathize with you completely on these things. And I think that's the point, right? It's like, it's all well and good when a client gives us a brief. Here's what we need. Here's what our problem is. But often senders come to us when they don't really know what the problem is. Like, often the reality of a client's email marketing operation doesn't really align with the initial expectation. So how often do you find that the client thinks one thing is wrong, but the reality is that something completely different is going on?
All the time. And I think I try and be as what's the word? I try and be as realistic as possible, and as transparent as possible. And I think in the past when I was younger, you try and like go around the houses a little bit and try and please as much as possible. And I think as you get kind of more experience and you can see things straight away when you go in, when you start to understand certain things. I just try and be as honest as possible now. And I'll say, look, like there's certain issues with, for example, for your data, or they'll say, look, we want to improve engagement. It's just, I'll give you an example in it, but that like the campaigns that they've been sending to people are all 100% like images. So it's like, and they've not even considered things like alt text, or what if people don't have downloadable images accessible on their, on their mailboxes and stuff, and they don't consider these things. And you find it a lot more with like retail and e-commerce, because they're obviously trying to highlight the products and stuff like that, which is fine, but they don't then think about like, I guess the sweet science of like how an email should look in terms of like image to text ratios and stuff like that. They just don't consider that because that's not their world. And then you'll take on a brief and it's like, we need to improve our engagement rates by X. And then when you actually look at examples of stuff they've been sending, you're like, well, that's why people aren't engaging, because it's like overly image heavy. Like the fonts are all different. Like we've probably all seen some real car crash like campaigns.
What do you find are the most common missing pieces that you come across in terms of data?
I mean, typically, I think it depends on the industry as well. So I've noticed in, for example, retail that, notoriously you'll have first name, last name. You might even have salutation, like Mr. and Mrs. and stuff like that, which is fine. What I find is missing sometimes is the kind of behavioral stuff as such. So it could be things like purchase behavior, and you'd think that's quite like, well, they should have purchase behavior, but sometimes it is missing, or it isn't as easy to understand or basically like use as much as you would like to as possible. But then in other industries, just basic stuff like first name is missing, or it'll just be like P, so it would just be a letter, or just little things where like it just limits to what you can do. So basic personalization is like, hey Phil, that's basically standard. But then if you don't have that, then you're having to think of things like hey there, or hello, and it's just
Hey there.
yeah, it's just not the way you would normally speak to someone. And I think I always try and do campaigns based on like how I would like to receive them as the customer. So I try and say to like a client, like, you can't just say like hello customer or hello valued customer, because there's no way you would, you speak to someone like hello valued customer. How, like, it's just not natural. It's just
Hello,
not
person of
right.
Earth.
Yeah,
Welcome to my.
it's just not normal. And I think like someone reading that is just gonna go, it's just not right. So I just find that, and then immediately if you just have a limitation to like first name, you just know you're in trouble, because if you've got limitations for first name, you've got limitations for far more like detailed stuff, which you want. And I mean, we laugh because we've all been there. Like we've all had those
It's true. But I'm just thinking
experiences.
about like, it's not a good sign, is it? If we have like first name problems.
It's also a great lead into our next question, because I think, it's always easy for us to sort of quickly get into the weeds and focus on the technical side of things. But in reality, a lot of the challenges that we're trying to solve for stem from the way that subscribers are engaging with the emails that they're receiving, or should I say sometimes failing to engage. And, we can look at what the sender's doing, but I guess part of all of our jobs is you've got to put yourself in the shoes of those subscribers, and you've got to walk a mile, on the road that is their subscriber experience, their lived life with your emails. And, I think I probably speak for all three of us, there's often going to be some surprises there, but what potentially surprises your clients when you're playing back that experience to them of, this is what it's like actually receiving your emails? And of course, you got to be sensitive, because, maybe you're going to be calling their baby ugly when you do that.
It's true. I think sometimes people don't like frequency is a big one. So, you know, I'll play that back and I'll go, I've received like 4 emails in the past 2 days, and they'll go, really? And they'll go, well, we've only sent one campaign out this week. But I'll go, well, have you like thought about your automations? So they'll have their marketing campaigns that go out on a weekly basis, but then they won't consider the timing of like their automations that they have running. So they could have various automation. It could be like post-purchase, re-engagement, whatever it is. I will then fall into those, obviously, those certain segments based on activity. But they've not thought about the logic of like, or governance in terms of, okay, these customers will receive an email in a week, but then what might they also receive in that week from an automation perspective? And I know when I used to work client side, a lot of the stuff I've been looking at is like looking at the frequency of like what people or how many emails should someone be receiving. And I know there are certain platforms that allow you to have like you can put like a limit on the amount they receive in the week, which is great. But then the worry is, what if they miss out on a campaign that is more relevant to them than another one because that limit's been in place? So there's so many things to consider. And I think when people talk about email marketing, I don't think they realize like how complex it can be. There's so many moving parts. There's so many things to consider. And what I try and do, especially with the clients I work with, is call out things very quickly in terms of it isn't just about getting a bit of data, designing a campaign and sending it and reporting on it. And hopefully they can kind of get on board with that and see, all right, okay, like this is why I propose to do this. It's because of all these things that I've kind of looked at in the past. And I think as well, you find that as you get more experience and working with different people and stuff like that, you learn from your failures. So the reason why I'm saying about, potentially receiving 4 emails in the week is because I've been there and I've sent a campaign and then I've noticed that that person's received another campaign half an hour later about something else. And you're like, oh, like I didn't think of that.
I would also have to say, as a sidebar comment, that learning from failure is also a great way of building empathy. And when you can just nod and go, yep, I made that screw up once, I know what it's about. It's a great way of forging a relationship with the customer you're working with.
Absolutely. And I know that, to your point on education, like helping clients evolve their thinking is kind of part of the job, because I think we take for granted, or everybody takes for granted, we all expect to get promotional material in our mailbox. We all do. So we think we can just promote the same way that we would promote anywhere, or that we can just blast emails out and hammer our subscribers. But as much as we are like troubleshooting and providing action items, we do end up kind of inevitably educating brands and senders. So when you are working with a client who's focused on maybe vanity metrics, or metrics that perhaps aren't as indicative to the overall performance of their like open rates or whatever, how do you guide them toward a deeper understanding of engagement, like those meaningful engagement metrics?
The biggest metrics that I really look at is click to open rate, because to me that kind of shows me exactly who is engaging on those campaigns. I know with some clients, like they don't even consider it. They just look at open rates, click-through rates, bounce rates, unsubscribes. And unsubscribes is such a gray area, because I've worked with clients before where they go, oh, well, we've had no unsubscribes off that email. Like, let's send more campaigns because no one's unsubscribing. And what I've found over the last few years is people might not unsubscribe, but it doesn't mean that they're still engaging. And I know that I receive emails off so many different people, as you can imagine. But what I just do now is just kind of like don't even open it, just move on. Like I just don't unsubscribe, and that's probably worse. Like I'm just ignoring the campaign. And I think what I try and say to clients now is like, yeah, your unsubscribes might be really low, but it doesn't mean that that's a good thing, because ultimately they're just still not paying attention. And what I try and do now is like, obviously you get the basic metrics from a platform. What I try and do is export the data and kind of do a little bit more of analysis in terms of like the types of or who is actually engaging with the campaign, to try and give them a little bit more, I guess, lifetime value of a customer and what they're doing. So you've kind of got your higher level metrics, which is obviously your open rates, click through rates, and all that stuff. But then I try and go a little bit more in terms of the detail, in terms of like click through rates, what people are clicking on from the email, for example. Try and do a little bit of like a hotspot in terms of what people are clicking on in the campaigns and stuff like that. I've started to introduce like little indicators in terms of whether people find that content relevant to them. So like, thumbs up, thumbs down, little things like that. Like, a bit of a ratings, like happy face, sad face, just little things as like indicators to see whether they actually found this content relevant to them or not. So trying to utilize those little things as well to give the client a little bit more added value in terms of like what people are engaging with and stuff.
So what do you do when you have to deliver bad news, or when the changes that you are recommending are really, really foundational? They're heavy lifting. How do you kind of present that?
Go back to transparency. I try and be as transparent and honest as possible. And I always try and say, look, you've brought me in because like this is what I do, and this is my life, in the sense of like, you've got me in to consult and to recommend. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to tell you everything that you want to hear. I'm trying to do my job to the best of my ability, and also give you best practices, which sometimes you're not doing. And I think in the past, I maybe sometimes took it to heart, in the sense of, why aren't they listening? Like, why aren't they taking my recommendations? Like what can I do to kind of like get them to like listen? And I think I've got to a point now where I'm like, I can only take it so far, and I can only do the best work that I can do, in the sense of this is what I truly do recommend, and this is based on experience and working with sometimes clients in the same industry as this client. So I am generally trying to give you like my recommendations. Now, ultimately, it's up to you guys to either implement them, or if you want to challenge them, that's fine. But I always say, let's do some testing. So sometimes I will challenge like the look and feel of a campaign, or I'll say, look, like the subject line's terrible, or whatever. And they'll go, what do you mean? Like, and I'll go, well, let's test it then. Let's test my ideas against yours. Let's have a, let's make something like, let's make a bit of fun of it. And I've always tried to do that. Like even when I was working client side, I had a team with me, and like sometimes my team would be like, "Why are we doing this?" Like, and I welcome challenging, because like life is challenging, and nothing is never the happy path. Like there's always the other paths. So I always say, look, please do challenge. Never be scared of that. And yeah, look, let's test it. Let's try different things. I think we have to. I think going back to what you were saying earlier, Guy, like, sometimes we learn the best when things don't work out the way that we would have hoped. It's how we then, change things going forward and learn from them. I think sometimes that's the best way. Like, it's never always going to be the way that you anticipate. And I think when I say that to a client, I say, look, like, I know you've asked me to do this, this, and this, but looking at, my discoveries and stuff like that, like these things aren't working well. You've got issues with these domains. Like you've got these deliverability issues, and they'll go, oh my God, like we didn't even know. And I'll go, right, well, don't worry about it. Like we've now found the issues. Let's try and fix them. And let's have a structured way of like, we're not going to get everything done now, but let's work together. And the big word I like to use all the time is collaboration. Collaboration is so key. And I always find that if you can't have that collaboration with a client, ultimately it's not going to work out. It's going to get to a point where it's like, it's just not working. So I think that's really, really important. And I think the more you collaborate with your clients, the better you build a rapport and relationship. So when you do have those challenging conversations, you've already got a good relationship with them. So you kind of have a bit of trust, and then you can kind of move forward. But yeah, we've all had difficult clients where they don't want to hear stuff, and you're like, okay, well, I've done my best.
You're spot on. I mean, when it works well in a good engagement and you and the client actually just become part of the same team and you're pulling together for the same objective, then it feels great. Let's flip it over. We touched on the idea that, in most consulting projects, there's usually a couple of quick wins. If your experience is anything like ours, I think what leaves you scratching your head at times is how often, sort of some of those quick wins, which seem perfectly obvious to us, come as a complete surprise to the client. They've never even thought of it. Would you agree? And there's like one or two examples that spring to mind of when that happens?
Yeah, so I mean, a very simple, basic one is a client I had was having issues with open rates, and I know open rates there's a
We're
bigger
with
picture
you.
to
They're
that.
useful.
Oh,
Don't
Yeah.
worry, we're with you.
Um, one of our clients, they were like, we're not getting as many people opening the campaigns as we used to, and what's going on? Is it deliverability and stuff like that? And I was like, right, okay, well, let's have a look at what you're sending. And this client was a B2B client, and what I found with B2B is obviously it's very different to B2C in terms of the communications, stuff like that. And I noticed that they were being very like customer level in terms of like the sender name was the company name, and the comms didn't feel very personable. And I always find with B2B it needs to have a little bit more of a personality, because it's normally more of a salesperson or someone trying to have a trying to build a rapport. So just a basic thing, I just said, look, let's test the sender name. Let's put that person's name who's the email's from as, let's say Phil at the company name. Just little things like that. They didn't even think about that, and they'd always just been brand heavy in terms of the of the sender name, and open rates just went up like massively. And then I said, okay, well, let's, as a little further step, let's make sure that when we sign off the emails that we're doing, we sign it off from the person who's put the sender name in. So it signs off, let's say if it's Phil at company name, the sign off will be, obviously my name. Just little things like that. Just boost engagement. We got people who are opening more. Actually, people were actually replying from the email as well, because they were just clicking reply, because it just looked like it was coming from someone rather than like a branded company campaign. And that was just a real small change, but it had really good results. So that's one thing that I kind of have taken away when I do speak to other B2B clients. I'm saying, like, how do your emails look? Like, what is the setup? Is it consistent with the messaging that you put in your subject lines or pre-headers or whatever? So just trying to, again, going back to education, I hate feeling like I'm talking at people, like I'm trying to talk with them, if that makes sense. And I just try and revert back to examples that I've done previously and saying, look, I've done this, and it's worked like this. I think this could work for you guys as well.
Every time we're coming to kind of the end of one of our recordings, it feels like I've just had a therapy session. And in this case, particularly so, because 3 consultants in a room talking about their process. I love it. Before we start to really wrap up here, of course, we want to ask about something, kind of a closing quick fire question. Everyone and their mom is talking about AI in email marketing. Can you tell Guy and I are maybe a little bit sick of it at this point? But hey, it's important and it's a topic for a reason. So, what is one piece of practical AI driven application that you might typically recommend as a part of your findings, if there is one?
I swear by this software. So I use something called Perplexity, and it was actually mentioned to me by a client that I have. He uses it quite a lot. And what's really good with Perplexity is that it gives you the actual sources of information when it brings it to you. So, for example, I don't know, I'm trying to find industry benchmarks for a certain industry. It'll go away and it'll go, here are the industry benchmarks, and it'll give you all these different stats. But it'll also give you the sources as to where it's got the information from. So it's really good for things like if you're doing presentations or you're doing a report or whatever it is, and you're trying to put in some facts and some information, you can then obviously put the source to where it's come from.
Love that.
And it's been really helpful from a research perspective, but then from a reporting perspective as well. Let's say you download a CSV file of a monthly statistics from a campaigns that you've been sending. It can create a really nice report for you as well.
That is awesome. And you've just solved a small mystery in my life, because yesterday I was watching the British Formula One Grand Prix at Silverstone. And in one of the sort of, camera view, one of the cockpit view camera shots, on Lewis Hamilton's helmet, he has a perplexity sticker. And I remember sitting there thinking, wonder what it is. You have just answered the question. Awesome. Phil, we've got to start wrapping up. So firstly, a huge thank you for being so generous with your insights and your expertise today. It's been a great conversation. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. To our listeners, if you're interested in connecting with Phil, learning a little bit more about his work, what's the best way they can get hold of you?
So the best way is LinkedIn. If you just type in Phil Ireland, I pop up. I've been doing various stuff now for a good couple of years in terms of videos and insights and stuff like that. So that's probably the best way to connect with me. And yeah, please do say hello. It's nice to just speak to people just, on the same wavelength and stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably the best way to get me.
I agree. It's always great to chat. And speaking of which, to our audience, be sure to tune in again next time. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Don't forget to visit senderscore.org for more resources to help you become a stronger sender.
And we're always super proud of the guests who join us on Email After Hours. And we're always looking for new people to come on future episodes. So if you'd like to join us in an upcoming episode, drop a comment or ping us on LinkedIn, or simply fill out the guest form linked in the show notes. As a quick note, if you'd like to give us any hot takes, send your questions, queries, you can email us too. Of course, you have to be able to email us. Our email address is emailafterhoursyt@gmail.com. Or again, go to the show notes. Leave us an audio message. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.